I'm married now to an amazing man, but I'm still dealing with the pain from my narcissistic ex. When does it stop? That's a really good question. Because unfortunately, like, I think that there's different aspects to this that carries through, and it can carry through for a long time. The biggest advice that I can give is to have some sort of coping plan and, like, healing plan for yourself. Whether that's you work with, like, a trauma therapist, or you work with a coach, or you just have strategies that work for you that just help you process the things that happen to you in that. And understand that it's natural that it does take a while. And everybody's timeline's different, so it doesn't necessarily matter how long it takes you versus anybody else. And just don't judge yourself for that. I know when I started dating him, I wasn't trauma bonded by any means. That had finally broken, but I still was dealing with some things. And I remember that there was a time where he told me, like, like, what he said to me was, you've let him go, now you just have to work on letting what he did to you go. And I remember that was actually a very profound statement that he made, because it was true. Like, I had no attachment to my actual ex, but I still struggled dealing with some of the stuff that my ex had done to me. And that caused all the trust issues and all of that. But I remember us having that conversation at one point. But if y'all also have questions, like, for Chad, like, to have the perspective of the other person, he's really great at answering those questions too, because we had a lot of very open and honest conversations when we first were getting to know each other and stuff.
I love and miss you too, Anne-Maurice.
Sorry, I was talking. If you hear random chewing in the background, it's just my dog. But any questions that you guys have? From New York. You helped me so much this summer. Good. I'm glad. What are you doing?
Introducing. Everyone want to meet Duchess.
She's obnoxious today. It's really gross sounding. Can we not? It's really gross. Do they ever stop trying to hoover? They do. When they stop getting here's the thing. Narcissistic and toxic people love getting a reaction out of you, because it shows them that they still have some level of control over you, that they can get a response or even a reaction, even if it's a negative one. And the technique that you hear a lot is just gray rocking. You know, either just not responding at all. Like, if they text you from a whole bunch of different numbers, or they email you from a whole bunch of different emails, just don't even respond. Just block and just keep moving. But if, they are actively, like, in contact with you, or they keep trying or whatnot, eventually they'll get tired of just not being able to get the reaction that they want out of you. And someone just commented, mine has never hoovered. Honestly, mine never did either. And I pretty much knew that was going to happen when I went no contact, because he tried really hard to, like, stay friends. Well, that's what he said. And so I knew when I blocked him, it was very unlikely that he was going to reach out again, because it played into that victim story of, like, oh, well, I tried to be friends with him and he didn't want to, he wasn't interested, oh, woe was me. So I knew I knew it was very unlikely for him to really try that hard.
Intuitive 2 said, how long after starting to date did you tell him about your TikTok?
Oh, I actually started my TikTok when we were dating. Right? Yeah.
We started TikTok together. Well,
yeah.
You started and then I started.
So when I first got on TikTok, I was kind of like that typical, like, I posted random stuff. Like, I would do, like, the trends, and I used to post a lot of videos of me singing, actually, when I first started. Mm-hmm. And it was just something I had fun with. And then I don't even know what possessed me to do something, but I just thought of this script. If y'all have ever seen the movie Inside Out, and it's, like, all the different emotions inside the little girl's head, I was like, oh, I wonder what goes on, like, in the mind of a narcissistic person. And it just sparked this idea And I sat down and made like 5 videos like that in a row and posted those, and they kind of took off. And that was kind of the beginning of my journey here. So he's actually been on this like whole social media journey with me from the get-go.
At one point I had more followers than you.
Oh, because you cheated. You did follow trains. Yeah, he had a brief moment where I think I had 12,000 at one point, and he got up to like
13,
and he was like, and I'm like, yeah. It was like this little, but that was before I was really posting this kind of stuff yet. It was just funny. Okay, see a question. Are you able to trust again? Yeah, I am now. It took. Do you want to talk about that at all? My trust issues at the beginning.
No, you got it.
It was really rough on me at the beginning. Thank God he's very patient with me. Do you remember that one time when we stayed at the hotel in Fort Worth and I had to go to work one day and you were in the hotel the whole day? Do you remember how rough that day was on me?
No.
Oh, I do. That was like, maybe I hid it a little bit from you. So when we first started dating, we lived like an hour apart. Like he lived in North Dallas and I lived in Fort Worth. And so there was a day that like we were going to spend a weekend together. I didn't have my kids with me. So we ended up getting a hotel in Fort Worth because I was in this like in-between phase where my lease on my house had gotten up and I was about to start grad school like 6 months later. So I temporarily was staying with my parents. So we got a hotel in Fort Worth, but I had to go to work one of those days. Well, coming from somebody who like, I was cheated on like the last 5 months of the narcissistic relationship. And that was the hardest part for me to get over, was just that fear of being hurt in that way again. I could deal with almost all of the other stuff, but that at the time was like my absolute biggest fear. And it's funny because me and my ex, like, we did all the things. Like, we shared our location together, and he always checked in, like, hey, I'm, just made it home, or I'm headed here, or blah, blah, blah. But, it still happened, because they're going to do it. They're going to find a way. And I just remember I had to go to work, and he was at the hotel, like, all day by himself. And that was, that was a really hard day for me. And ultimately, what I just had to realize was there was 2 things. Number 1, trusting other people really just comes down to making a choice. Like, we see things in other people and we see characteristics that make us feel like they are a trustworthy person, but ultimately we decide if we're going to trust them or not. The biggest part is to actually learn to trust yourself again, and to know that you have learned a lot of things and that you know the signs to look for. You do have good instincts. We just ignored our instincts last time, and just being able to trust ourselves again. And the second part of all of that was I had to understand that ultimately I could never control what he decided to do. Like, if he woke up one day and just decided he didn't see what I brought to the table, and because it's not just me, I have 3 great kids, like, I'm about to have doctor in front of my name, like, I'm gonna have a great career, like, all of this stuff. If he just woke up one day and he didn't see that anymore, and he decided to go cheat and all of that, that's a reflection of him, and vice versa. Like, it's not a reflection of me and not a reflection on my lack of worth. It would just be a reflection of something that's going on with him, and it would be the same thing the other way, because that's how it was with my ex. My ex cheated on me because it's just is who he is. It didn't have anything to do with me. So once I came to that realization and just released the need to control, which was very difficult, it just clicked one day. Like, it really did.
Heather's in here. She said hi.
Hi, Heather. Sorry, it's hard for me. I'm kind of far away from my phone, so it's hard for me to see everything. So he's on the feed. Duchess, you just can't do anything quiet, can you? That was a good question, though. Grad school is going. I'm halfway through. So, we're getting there. I graduate May of 2024. I start my clinical rotation in just like 2.5 weeks. I start on the 23rd. So, Have you thought about having someone interview your ex about narcissist and what his thoughts are? No.
No.
No. I mean, that would just be it would honestly just be a waste of time. My ex doesn't think he's a narcissist. And, it's... No. I mean, no. And why I wouldn't put myself in a position to ever be in contact with him again. Thank you. I don't know if I'll be able to date again after my TikToks. Now, I've been very fortunate that he's been extremely supportive of this whole career that's just taken off very organically and just kind of on its own. Did your ex-narc hurt your children or triangulate? No, actually, so this was the hard part about my relationship with him. One of the reasons that I stayed so long was because he was new to parenting. He'd never really been around kids before, but he was overall, really good with them. He would play with them, and he acted like he loved the whole dad life thing. And that was when he was always at his best, because I have shared custody with my kids, so I have them 3 to 4 days a week. And that would be when he was at his best, and when we worked really well together and all this and whatnot. Everything would go to hell whenever they would go back to their mom's house. So he never showed up until the end. And that's when things started to change for me, because towards the end is when he started to get more aggressive towards me in front of my kids. And for me, that was a really big, absolutely hell no line for me. But that's what made it really difficult, because I would see this good side of him so frequently because we lived together. So he would help do the dinners, and we had this whole nighttime routine that we had with the kids and all of that. And I would enjoy those moments so much, because that was when the drama went away, outside of just having 3 young kids. So no, and then I kicked him out on a weekend that I did not have my kids, so he never even had... It was he was there one day and then he was gone. So, unfortunately my kids didn't get the opportunity to say goodbye to him, and he didn't earn the right to say goodbye to my kids because of what happened the night I kicked him out. So he didn't really have the opportunity because my children weren't with him. But using children and triangulating through children when you're... Well, we say co-parenting. You never really co-parent with a narcissist. It's parallel parenting. But that's very, very common. Absolutely it is. She's playing with the cat's toy. Duchess, that's not yours. Thank you. Good girl. Like I said, if y'all have questions for Chad too, from his perspective of things, because he'll just sit here and listen to me talk.
Mm-hmm.
But if y'all have questions for him, let him know. I do have book recommendations, so they are in the link in my bio. There's my top 3 book recommendations are in there. One was Why Does He Do That? Another one is What Happened to You by Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. And then Love You More by Carrie McAvoy. Those are my top 3. And I actually have the links to the Amazon in my bio. Go terrorize something. I heard it's not about trusting him, but making sure you can trust that you will be okay if it happens. A lot of it is that. You have to... I just had to tell myself, no, obviously I don't ever want to go through anything like what I went through again. But I had such a different knowledge base, and I knew... The best way I can say it is that I now knew what would happen if I ignored red flags or I ignored my intuition. And so I just had to learn to be okay to walk away from something if I didn't feel that it was right. But if something did happen in the relationship, if I can break a trauma bond with a narcissist, I can do anything. That's literally the mindset that I had. So even if our relationship hadn't have worked out, there's pain anytime a relationship doesn't work out. Like, even if it's a healthy breakup, like so I just had to trust that I would be okay too. Like, that's a really great point. You're so needy. I'm just scrolling through comments really quick. I don't know why I'm doing it this way. You're right next to me with him. I ignored red billboards. Yeah, I did too. If I can survive this emotional pain, I can survive anything. Yeah, it was funny when I decided. I use that as my motto for so many things. Like, I broke a freaking trauma bond pretty much on my own. Like, that's why I wrote my course, because I was so desperate to just feel normal again, because and you have to understand, I was in therapy every week. I had a very supportive family unit. I had supportive friends. Like, I had a support system, but nobody could still tell me, like, what to do and give me strategies on a day-to-day basis to just get out of, like, the mind fog and just move forward and just start to reclaim myself again. And that's the whole reason why I even wrote my course, because I had this mindset of, I want to write something that I wish that I would have had back then. So if you guys do feel like you're ever in a rut, or you just have this like obsessive thinking pattern and you just don't know how to shake it, and you don't know where to start, or you don't know how to start reclaiming like meaningful activities for yourself, or reclaiming your life back piece by piece, I did write a course. It's called Breaking Free from Rumination, and again, the link for that is it's in my bio. Please go check that out. It's a 6-week course. It's self-paced, and it walks you through how to manage triggers, manage emotions, how to get closure. Like, it literally walks you through everything. There's a question to you. How does he feel that you talk about my ex?
What was that?
Do you see it? Yeah. Okay. Stop.
How does he feel that you talk about your ex? At first, it was weird, because I didn't really know. You know, like, I don't really know how to explain it. Like, it was kind of just weird, because, like, that's a red flag in a relationship when someone talks about their ex. But then, like, he started talking about it more and more, and as we started dating, he started opening up more about it. And then now it's to the point where he's not just helping himself, like, grow. Because at first, that's what it was for him. He was still growing in his own terms and coming to terms with what happened to him. Now he's not helping himself anymore. Now he's helping hundreds of thousands, if not millions more, learning about how to get out of a narcissistic relationship with them. So now it's like he's taking what he's learned and moving it forward. Yeah.
That's a good question, though. Because, yeah, I mean, any other situation, like,
is it normal? No.
No. But, I mean, there's a purpose behind it. Because, if y'all think about it, too, like, a lot of my content, I don't really talk about my ex necessarily. Like, I don't sit there and talk about what my ex did a lot, but I do talk about characteristics, and sometimes I use stories and examples. But I'm so far into the healing process now that even when I talk about my story, sometimes it almost doesn't necessarily feel as my story. Like, I know that this happened to me, and I know all of these things are a part of how I got here. That was lovely, attractive, Duchess. There's so many interesting background noises, I'm sure, on this live. But I can talk about my story without being emotionally attached to my story. But that's a really good question. I think a lot of people are curious about that.
My friend Amaris says, "What is your thoughts on dealing with narcissistic parents? Having dealt with narcissists before." I don't know what that meant. Last part.
Having dealt with.
Dealt with.
So if you want to follow, there's a couple people that she may need to be put in. There's a couple people that you can follow that actually talk about narcissistic parenting, or like parents a lot. One is her handle is Stand Coaching. She had her father was narcissistic, and then How to Love a Battered Woman. She talks a lot about narcissistic parents because her mother was one. So if you want people to follow that talk about that content specifically quite a bit, follow both of them. They're both fantastic. But for me, with narcissistic parents, when it comes to dealing with them, here's the thing about like these kind of people and narcissistic tendencies and stuff. Please stop. That just, I feel like I have to leave the room. Just driving me crazy. Is that it's all the same, like regardless of the actual relationship dynamic, whether it was your parent, whether it's a sibling, whether it was a coworker, whether it was a romantic relationship, whether it was a friendship, the mental detoxing and how you handle them is all of the same. There's obviously a little bit of catering versus like what the actual situation is. Like if people are in a co-parenting situation, they may not be able to completely go no contact. If it is a parent situation and you still want to be involved in the family, like you may not be able to go completely no contact. So the first thing that you have to decide when it comes to any kind of relationship with a narcissistic person is decide where they stand in your life. So if you want to be no contact with them, like completely no contact, the way to go about that's very different. Another one that talks about narcissistic parents is Abuse is Abuse. She's really great too. So those are my top three: Stand Coaching, How to Love a Battered Woman, and Abuse is Abuse. I know, I can't remember if Kat is no contact, but I know How to Love a Battered Woman, Nia, Renee, she's no contact, and Bree from Abuse is Abuse, she is no contact. I can't remember about Kat. I don't think she's full no contact, but I think she's very limited contact. So you just have to decide like where they fit into your life, and based on that is how you handle them. So again, like maybe one parent is and one parent's not, but they're still together. So if you have a narcissistic dad but not a mom, and you want a relationship with your mom, then you just have to have limited contact with your dad and do a lot of gray rocking and, you know, just keeping conversation surface level and, you know, focus on the relationship with the mom. So that's the first step, is just defining where they are in your life, if that makes sense. Any other ones I've done?
David says, if they can't control you, they will turn your children against you.
They will try to, because it's about that kind of goes back to the triangulating thing that we talked about earlier. Because they're going to win over who they can. And they'll try to get into the minds of people that they feel like they can get into. So yeah, and the other thing to realize is that they can't control you. Then the next thing that they're going to do is they're going to try to control everybody's perception of you, and they will tell an altered version of your story to anybody that will listen. So you have to keep that in mind too.
And Emily said the hardest thing is still trying to parent my daughter with him.
Yeah. If you're in that co-parenting situation, the biggest thing that you will hear everybody tell you this, and again, I don't co-parent with my narcissistic ex, but a lot of my friends do, and the number one thing that I hear all of them say is, do not talk bad about your ex to your kids. You be more of the focus of being the safe space for them and being that consistency and that constant, and just truly trust that they will start to see that for themselves. But do not talk bad about your ex to your kids. That's a big mistake, because what that's going to do is that gives your ex the ammunition about that you're the problem, if that makes sense. Because if they get wind that you start talking bad about them, then they can use that against you very easily. That's when you're either with a narcissistic ex or not. Just don't talk bad about their parent to them. It just makes you look like the problem. I don't know how to tell if someone has good intentions and who doesn't anymore. It's about consistency, and it's about patterns of behavior. I struggle with that a lot with him, of just trusting that he was who he said that he was. And I remember there was this one time early on when we were dating that he said like, oh, I promise I'll never hurt you. And I'm like, well, you can't promise me that, because we're both human beings. Like, we're gonna hurt each other. Like, it just is what it is. You can promise that you won't hurt me the way that my ex did. But as far as just like not hurting, like that's not possible. Like, but it took it took me a long time to see. And I shouldn't say it took me a long time, but it just took me. I was more observant than I was previously, and I think you naturally are just more observant when you start to date again, because you start to look for patterns of behavior a little bit more, and you stop listening to excuses and you start listening to actions instead. So if they're showing consistency of the good intentions and showing good consistency that they stick to their word, then you have evidence to back up what they're saying. I feel like I'm overly observant though. That's not a problem though. Like, especially at the beginning, it's almost better to be overly observant. Now, if you're looking for things to be wrong, that's a little different, because then if you look for things to be wrong, then you'll find something, that. But if you are just observant, like the way I would say, okay, so there was one conversation that we had pretty early on where essentially like we're both only children, so we both are kind of like used to getting our way, and we both like the spotlight. So I was observant about that because it was something that wasn't a red flag, but that was something that we both needed to be aware of, because we needed to be able to learn how to either share the spotlight together or back out of it and let the other person have their time. So he was a competitive cheerleader. So anything that we did cheer related, I'm in the background. Like, I'm the one carrying the backpack. I'm the one that's, sitting in the stands by myself. I'm the support system for that. But when we went to the meet and greet in Austin, for me, like, that was him. Like, he was the one helping set up, and he was the one carrying stuff around. So
I helped everyone.
You helped everyone, yes. But, there was no fighting of who got the spotlight, if that makes sense. We've never really fought over that. We've had to learn how to balance that. The part of us both liking to get our way, that's the one that challenges us the most. Because we're both stubborn.
Haley June does hair says, is my brain going to be permanently damaged from the abuse?
That's a good question. And the answer is no. The brain is very, very what's called plastic, which means like neuroplasticity is a very real thing, which means that your brain can change and it can be healed. Like, it's funny, Carrie McAvoy and I were just talking about that on our group coaching today. But the thing is that that's why you need these strategies. That's why you need to learn like new techniques, and that's why you need to know how to be able to stop and distract your thinking and redirect yourself. Because there is brain damage that comes from this. I've learned in school. For those of y'all that don't know, I'm getting my doctorate in occupational therapy, and there's a lot of neuroscience involved in what I do. When you are under this amount of stress for this long of time, there are changes that happen to your brain, almost to the severity of like a traumatic brain injury, but it is healable. It's just like someone that has a traumatic brain injury from a motorcycle accident, or like my dad had a TBI whenever I was 15. He was in a really bad car accident. Well, at one point in time, like, my dad struggled knowing how to dress himself, and struggled walking and communicating and having impulse control because of the part of his brain that was damaged. He still struggles with impulsivity of his mouth a little bit sometimes, which is funny but dangerous all at the same time. But the point is like, he healed from that and he relearned how to do all of that stuff. Our brain is very, very adaptable. So this is a very long-winded answer to, like, yes, the brain damage that you go through is reversible, but it doesn't go away on its own. And again, that's why I have my course, is to give you those strategies. It literally teaches you, when you're in that obsessive thinking cycle, how to be able to stop it in its tracks, redirect yourself physically and mentally, how to manage the emotions, how to balance the fact that you are dealing with emotions and you're dealing with grief, and all the 5 stages. I wrote a whole 5 stages of grief over narcissism. So all of that is in that course. And again, it's called Breaking Free from Rumination. It's in the link in my bio. Please go check it out. There's a whole free preview in there that you can just go and see everything that it entails.
Green Eyes said, are you in therapy?
So when I first left, I was in therapy every week. I was in therapy once a week, every week. for months. I still see my therapist, but it's pretty as needed is the best way I can describe it. Like, I'll go months without talking to her, and then like over the summer I started seeing her again, and we were seeing each other I think like every other week, and we only did that for like 2 months, and I haven't had an appointment with her since November, I think. So yes, but not all the time now. But at the beginning I was. But I've also been going to the same therapist for about probably 5 years at this point. What is our love language? So mine changes a lot. I would say words of affirmation is pretty consistent one of mine. I think that's one of yours too, especially at work. Words of affirmation is very big for him. Sometimes mine changes from like physical touch and acts of service. Those kind of flop out a lot. It depends on what's going on in my life. Like if I'm like really, really busy, then acts of service kind of outweighs a lot of things because I get so overwhelmed. So if he like does anything around the house, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like it just melts me. What are yours?
I don't remember.
Okay, we took the quiz when we first started dating.
Beginning of our relationship.
I remember words of affirmation was really high for him, and I want to say gifts.
Love gifts.
Yes, I know you do love gifts.
Micah says, your videos are my favorite. They make me feel so much more normal.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'm glad that they do, because we feel very isolated in this, and we feel like nobody understands, or that we're the only ones going through it, and we're not crazy, and we're not isolated to our experience. It's crazy. The more people that I coach on my one-on-ones and the more people that I meet and talk to, it is so insane how similar everybody's story is, and it just goes to show that they really just, it's like they all go through the same training camp. It's weird. I mean, we all obviously have our own unique experiences, but everyone's story that I've heard is just, it's very similar to mine, and then very similar to like other people's and stuff. It's crazy. I'm just reading comments, y'all. I'm sorry. It's crazy how they all do the same things. I mean, it really is. And the same playbook, yeah. And that's what's kind of nice about this, though, is because once you start to learn about it, and once you start to be aware about it, like especially for some reason you do have to be in contact, it's almost like you can start to predict it. This is what's weird, is they're kind of predictably unpredictable, so you can't always know exactly what they're going to do, but you also know them well enough to know what they're most likely to do. Like, yes, it's very common that when you go no contact, that they will try to reach out to you from 6 different numbers and all of that stuff. But it's also common that they don't. And my therapist explained it really well, that with narcissistic people, yes, there are tendencies that most of them will do it, but it's not black and white like that. Like, we can't say like, oh, all narcissistic people do this and all narcissistic people do that. Like, we see patterns of behavior that show up, but ultimately, like, we know our ex's patterns more than anybody else, so we can almost start to predict what's going to happen. Like, there were times, because I was still in contact with my ex for about somewhere between 4 and 5 months after we had broken up, and it really did get to the point where like I could almost narrow it down to the day and the time that I would hear from him. Like, it was very predictable. Hi, Miss Britt. The apology of, I'm sorry you feel that way, is my favorite predictability. Yeah. Yeah. Some of them don't even do that. We need to infiltrate this training camp and take it down. Grab your torch and pitchforks. My children are narcs. Talk about heartbreaking. Oh my god, I can't imagine. Yeah, actually one of my, I had a coaching call, like a validation call with someone in that situation. And as a parent, I can't imagine, like I literally can't. So my heart really does go out to you. It really does. I still feel empathy for him because he's the way because I know he is that way due to intense trauma, but I still miss the mask though. I think this is a really great thing to point out because it's great that you recognize that you miss the mask because that's really key. It's key for us to realize what we actually miss in these situations so that way it prevents us from making emotionally based decisions. And there's nothing wrong with feeling empathy for someone because of their past. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But at some point in time, they have to make the decision to change. You do not have the power to change anybody except for yourself. And at the end of the day, you are only responsible for your own mental health. My ex liked to hold his mental health over me. Like, that was one of the little carrots that he would dangle. Like, well, if you ever leave me, like, I would stop taking care of myself. And he would do that because he knew how much I did care, like, that he would take care of himself and how much I wanted him, not to do it for me, but for him. Like, I wanted him to genuinely have a better life than he had been having. So he held that over me a lot. And even the day that I kicked him out, it was, you really think I'm going to take care of myself if I walk out of this door? And I just looked at him, I was like, I can't be the reason that you want to take care of yourself. You have to want to get better for you, for yourself, because you want a better life. If you keep putting, and I told him this before, because we've had conversations about this kind of stuff. I've told him, because he likes to make comments that I've changed him, and I haven't. Like, I have given him the space to grow and to move into a mature relationship, because you've never dated someone with kids before me, right? No. So it's different when you date someone with kids, and you had to think about that. Your extensive dating history. But I haven't changed him. I gave him the space, and I also, I never looked at him as the version of him when he was in his 20s. And I think a lot of his friends still do. And so that's what they expect out of him. Like, they expect 20-year-old Chad. But I never knew that version of him, so all I have seen is the guy that, like, has goals, and the guy that wants to improve and wants to get better and is on a journey, like, with me. Because we're both, like, he has his own traumas that he deals with too, and I obviously have mine that I've dealt with and dealing with. I don't really deal stuff with my ex anymore. It's a lot of stuff from my, like, teenage years. But I haven't changed him. I gave him the space to, and I've walked the road with him. Like, I've held his hand as he has walked the road. And that's the thing. Like, I told my ex, I will walk this journey with you, but you have to ultimately be the one that goes on the journey. And he just didn't want to do the work. Or he wanted the quick fix. He wanted to be able to pop a pill and think that fixed it. And that's not what fixes everything. I don't even remember what I was originally talking about. So hopefully I answered whatever question that was. I got on a rabbit hole rant. There was one about after a year. Yeah, that one.
After a year of no contact, why do I still struggle with forgiveness? Today was hard.
So I'm never gonna be the person that says that you have to forgive someone. That's not my place. I chose to forgive my ex, but that was a very spiritually based decision because of how I was raised in my belief system. I chose forgiveness. But I know not everybody wants to make that choice, and they don't feel like they can make that choice, and that's okay. There are some things that are done to you that just flat out aren't forgivable. The thing about it, whether you want to call it forgiveness, whether you want to call it letting go, whether you want to call making peace at it, really the basis of all of those is the same. When we think about letting go of things or letting go of someone, or coming to terms or making peace with this kind of stuff, what we have to keep in mind is that it is not about them. Like, me deciding to forgive my ex was not about excusing his behavior. It was not to give space for him to come back into my life. Forgiving him was not about, it was not about saying that what he did was okay. It had nothing to do with him. What forgiving him for me had to do with, and again, whether this is forgiveness or letting go, whatever journey you're going to go on, it's about releasing yourself from the chains that their actions put on you. So it's not saying that their actions are okay, and it's not saying their actions are excusable, and it's definitely not forgiving and forgetting. I haven't forgotten anything that happened to me or what he did, and I never want him back in my life. He never will be a part of my life again. But it was about letting go of the chains that his actions put on me. You know, Dr. Carrie McAvoy, she talks about, she phrases it in a way that she feels like when you can't let go of something, it's kind of like drinking poison and expecting the other person to be affected. And that's what bitterness is. It's a poison that we take, and we expect it to affect somebody else. So whatever you decide that your journey is, whether it is letting go, whether it's making peace, whether it is forgiveness, whatever term you put to it, just remember, it's not about saying that their actions were okay. It's not saying that you don't deserve justice for their actions. It's about letting go of the emotional weight that their actions put on you. And that mindset helped me a lot. One of the things that I actually have in my course too is how to build like a mantra about, I call it like the letting go mantra. And it's where you just like literally name them one by one, the things that you let go of from them, like letting go of them from your heart, from your spirit, from your mind, you know, letting go of certain actions, all of that. And again, that's all in there's a whole week of that in my Breaking Free from Rumination course as well. I'm struggling coming to terms with the flying monkeys played a part in it all. Yeah, because it's still betrayal. I mean, and nobody likes it when people decide to believe an altered version of your story, especially if there are people that you know or had some sort of relationship with. But ultimately, I kind of looked at it as like he's socially purged my circle for me because if people decided to believe a completely altered version of my character, then they were never for me to begin with. And yeah, there's pain associated to that, but ultimately, like, I'm glad that I figured that out sooner rather than later. I thought I saw a question pop up there for you.
I was asking, is it hard for me to be on video?
Oh.
When I walked away, I think.
Oh.
No, I just had to use the bathroom. And I have ADD, so I can't sit still very long.
Does. When we go live together, we usually like an hour tops. That's why I give him the phone, because it gives him something to do.
And I can't vape on camera, so I had to step away.
Had to. Yeah, TikTok doesn't let you vape on lives. Our dog is about to be a year old. Gross.
Okay.
She's a year old. She turns a year in February. She's chose obnoxious today, though. I struggle with forgiving myself for staying so long and sacrificing so much. That's it. I think that part actually took me longer because I didn't realize how mad at myself I was. I was so focused on like dealing with everything that he did and coming to terms with that. I knew nothing about this person. Like, I lived with essentially a stranger for almost a year. I had to focus on that immediate part for so long that I never realized how mad at myself I was, or how guilty I felt, or how much unforgiveness for myself was. I had to go through the same exact forgiveness mantra, the letting go mantra. I had to go through all of that just for me too. Like the same work that I had to do to let go of everything my ex did to me, I had to do it for myself too. And that brings up a great point. I am never going to tell people that they have to forgive their ex. But I do think it is very necessary for you to figure out how to forgive yourself. Because if you don't, and here's why that's important. If you can't get to a place where you can forgive yourself, then you're setting yourself up to repeat this cycle, because subconsciously you're going to believe that you deserve what you get. So it's very, very important. You can't, I don't think you can fully heal from this if you don't forgive yourself. Forgiving the ex, that's, for me, that's based on personal and spiritual beliefs. I do think that you have to figure out a way to let go of what they did to you, but forgiveness, not necessarily. For me, I chose forgiveness because, again, that was a spiritually based decision. How to forgive myself after leaving a narcissist. Like I said, the way that I did that was that was hard. That was really complicated. One of the first things I had to do in order to forgive myself was I had to stop holding my past self to the knowledge and the standards that my present self had. And what I mean by that is that I learned a lot about narcissistic people. I learned a lot about negative belief systems that I had been holding on to. I learned a lot about how I truly viewed myself, things that I had not dealt with. And I had a whole new knowledge base. But I kept holding my past self, the guy that was in that relationship, like the me version of that was in that relationship. I kept trying to hold him to these new standards that I had, and you can't do that. Like you can't look back on yourself with this newfound knowledge or even newfound self-worth and like get mad at that person. And I had to start shifting to where when I looked back on the person that was in that relationship, I started to look back on him with more compassion. Like, that guy's been through enough. Like, he went through a whole heck of a lot. And I need to stop being mad at him. I need to stop emotionally beating him up. Like, I had to start to look back and almost imagine, like, I would go through pictures of me during that time period, and I would just almost imagine myself, like, giving that version of me a hug. Like, and just telling them, like, you deserve so much more than what you're accepting right now, and understand the story that I was telling myself back then. So back then I was just scared to be alone. I was terrified to do life on my own, and there was a lot of significance to the relationship at the time. So I had to change all of that mindset first before I can even really start to forgive myself. And so if you find yourself looking back and you're saying a lot of these really negative, self-deprecating phrases like, oh my gosh, I was so stupid, or I was such an idiot, and blah, 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 you have to correct those. And again, all of that is in the course too. Yes, my dog is eating. She doesn't do anything quiet. I'm so sorry if you hear chomping in the background. Just is what it is. It's never a dull moment around our house. Between the dog and the cat and the 3 children. But yeah, in the course, there's a whole week on that too, about discovering what your negative self-beliefs are and learning how to correct those. Because if you continue to have this like negative mindset about yourself, then again, you're just going to continue to be mad about yourself. You're just going to continue to be mad at yourself. So again, all the stuff that you guys are talking about, this is all the same stuff that I went through. And I just remember feeling so frustrated because I just wanted to know what to do. I just needed somebody to like, I remember saying like, just give me a playbook and I will do it all. Like, just tell me what to do, I will do it. And I was literally trying everything to make this work. So that's the whole reason why I wrote the Breaking Free from Rumination course, so that way you can have the exact plan and playbook that I did not have at the time. So again, there's a whole free preview of that. If you go to the link in my bio and you click on it, it's going to take you to a whole layout of everything. it walks you through all of these. It's got articles, it's got worksheets, it's got videos that you watch. It's self-paced, so you can take your time in it. And that's the whole reason, like I said, why I wrote that. Okay, look in your phone. It's like hurting my eyes. Thanks. Oh no. Closed out of it. Do you believe that your narcissistic ex weakens you to control you? I think they wear you down. I don't know if I would say they weaken you, but I think that they definitely wear you out. Because at some point, like, people can just only take so much. And I just remember that I would give in a lot, because if I just would just be like, okay, and I would just give in and not question it or not fight it, it would end faster. So I think a lot of it just, I think a lot of it comes based to that. I don't necessarily know if I would say they weaken you, but I do think they wear you down, for sure. That's a good question. And the only reason why I say this is because I don't like to necessarily use the word weaken, because if, in order to deal with a narcissistic person for any length of time, you actually have to be a pretty incredibly strong individual in some aspects, because you are trying so hard to make the impossible happen. And can you please do something with her? She's just, I can't anymore. You do, like, you have to be an incredibly strong individual to deal with this kind of stuff, because you're trying to take on an impossible task and make it work. You know, it's like this whole uphill battle when you're dealing with these type of people. So I don't like to use that word, because like I said, to me it takes an incredible amount of strength to deal with these kind of people, and then it takes even just the same amount of strength to move on from it. I'm married to a narcissist and it's hard to get out. It's very hard to get out. It is. And if you need help with an exit strategy, reach out to Roller Coaster of Love. That's actually one of the things she helps coach on. I never had an exit strategy. I just kicked him out. Like, it just got to a fight or flight point where I was scared for my physical safety, and I just essentially just kind of bowed up and said, get out of my house. So I didn't have an exit strategy. But if you need help with planning one, like I said, Roller Coaster of Love. Now the cat's getting involved. Like, really? I'm telling you, it never stops around here. She helps with that. So her handle's Roller Coaster of Love. And she's got some great content, but she also does coaching too. And one of the things that she does coaching on is exit strategies. My coaching is a little bit better. So there's a lot of us that are coaches, obviously, and there's like a whole group of us who may have heard of us, like we're the Narc Avengers. And a lot of us, not all, but most of us do coaching, and we all kind of have like our strengths. I would say that my strength is the reclaiming process, like after you leave. Like being able to get out of that obsessive thinking cycle and reclaim your life and start incorporating meaningful activities back into your routine. I would definitely say that's more my strength. I can give very basic advice on an exit strategy, but I feel like it would be a better resource to go through someone like Ro, and she's fantastic. I got out by catching a felony. Don't do that.
That's why I was laughing.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It was funny. No, find another way. Hey, at least you got out at some point in time. You know what? You got out. That's what's important. I'm sorry, the wording of that was just really funny. I'm getting your course as soon as I get paid. Hey, take your time on it. There's 2 different payment options. You can buy it all in one, or you can break it up into payments too. I tried to make it as affordable as possible. Because I understand that with this, like, financial abuse can be a very real thing and all of this, and a lot of times we're getting back on our feet. So absolutely, take your time on it. Being discarded was the hardest part for me. It didn't even care about me as a human. Yeah, because, I mean, if you think about, like, just even the word discard, like, I mean, it's like throwing out the trash. Like, you discard the trash, you know, and that's what it feels like. I mean, I was put into a position where I was forced to discard him. You know, I wasn't to the point where I caught a felony, but it was to the point where he pushed me to the point of no return. The one boundary I was able to hold of the entire relationship was I will not be put in a position to fear for my physical safety. If I ever have that boundary crossed, I'm done. Because his behaviors would scare me, like when he had his rage episodes. I mean, he would throw things around and he would slam stuff and punch holes in walls and throw his phone and throw my phone. And just the erraticness of his behavior would frighten me, but I didn't feel scared for my physical safety. It was just frightening, if that makes sense. But the night that I kicked him out is when it crossed that line to where I was actually scared that I was going to get hurt. I was backed into a corner. He was spitting on me. The veins were popping out of his neck. His fist was balled up. And it was just like, I was just looking into his face and he was unrecognizable to me. And I was like, if I don't do something, I had this flash. It was like a flash of us having it out in the living room. Like, it was kind of like almost like a premonition where it was like, if I don't do something, that's where this is headed. And I just bowed up to him and I was like, get out of my house. I used more choice words than that, but but he knew, like, he knew that was a line that if that was crossed, I would never go back. So he didn't hoover me in the traditional way to try to get back with me because, again, he knew. He tried to hoover me in the form of staying friends. Oh my gosh, do you remember that one time? I don't even know if you remember this, but it was like a month after we started dating and I got that random message on Snapchat. It was when you lived with Beck still. You don't remember anything, do you? These were like big moments for me and he doesn't remember them. Never mind. You really don't remember that?
I was drinking heavily back then.
I don't know if that's something to brag about, but okay.
Sober now. Still like potty.
You weren't. It's not like you were an alcoholic.
I know.
God.
What thing on Snapchat?
Remember, I got that message from that random account on Snapchat,
Oh,
and I was
thought it was your
convinced
ex?
it was him.
Yeah.
That was the only time that I really thought. That I thought that he was trying to reach out to me because it was like a month after he and I started dating, and I got this random message on Snapchat from an account that I had. And what was creepy about it is that it was an account that I know that had. Okay, so I was on Tinder at one point in time, and I had my Snapchat on my Tinder. Actually, that's how we met. But so I would have random people add me on Snapchat all the time. So I know this person had been on my Snapchat for a while, but I hadn't talked to them before. Like, there was no actual interaction. And when they, you know how people text, like, you know the emojis that they use, you know how they present themselves in a text message. It was like 3 texts in from this one account on Snapchat that I was like, oh my God, I think this is him. And it was just weird that he asked about him. Like, one of the messages that I had gotten was about him, you know, so like, it was just weird, and I just knew. And I said something to that account that only my ex would have known, like, as a way to say, like, I know this is you, and I was immediately blocked. So I'm pretty sure it was him. But that was the only time that he really actually tried to reach out. I don't have actual proof of that. I was just highly, highly suspect.
Diana Kozak says my ex wants to be friends, so he is hovering me.
Yes, 100%. And here's the thing. They want to continue to be friends with you because there's several reasons to this, and I have a whole playbook of experience. It's 100% about keeping control because the manipulation from them does not stop just because the relationship stops. In fact, I think it actually gets worse. They're going to stay friends with you, and everything that you had been asking them to do in the relationship, they're all of a sudden going to start doing. Like, when it comes to, like, working on themselves. So I kept trying to encourage my ex to go to therapy because of the stuff that he had been through in his past. I was like, look, anybody that's gone through what you've gone through would need therapy. He never would go. All of a sudden, 2 months after we were dating, he's seeing a therapist. He wasn't, but he said that he was. And there were all these things, like, he was keeping up with me. So if, like, literally, if I would post because I lost, like, 15 pounds within 2 weeks after he left because I wasn't really eating. So, I was kind of feeling myself a little bit. So I would, like, post, like, shirtless pictures on Snapchat, which I never do. Like, I never do. I'm not that guy because I actually have a really horrible body image. But I would post, like, pretty much he would match me. So if I posted a selfie on my story, I could guarantee within an hour he was posting one. If I posted a picture of, like, myself, he would post one. If he found out I was on a date, all of a sudden he was on a date. And he was, like, doing this weird competition thing with me. But the other thing that he was doing was he was keeping tabs and also trying to show me and continue to rub in my face that he was fine without me. But he would do things that, I'm just going to give an example of this. So there was one time he had to come, he would never get his mail forwarded. So there was one time that he came by to pick up his mail. My kids were at the house, so I didn't let him come in. I walked outside and handed it to him. And it was the last time that I actually saw him in person. And, you know, he just was like, had tears in his eyes, and he's like, it's so hard knowing that the kids are inside. I miss them so much. Like, I miss this house, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he just miss me, blah, blah, blah. Literally, he texted me that night again at like 1:45. I don't even remember exactly what he said, but he said something, and I was asleep already, so I didn't get it till the next morning. So then when I texted him back, I said, well, what were you doing at 1:45 last night? And he sent me pictures of this dude that he hooked up with. Like, I would want to know about it. But he did that on purpose because he kind of, like, it was kind of a validation that I needed in a way, or that I wanted at the time, to know that he missed me because, again, he was acting like he was just fine. So, like, hearing him say that he missed me, like, validated me in a certain way. And then it was like, just kidding. And I know all of that was done on purpose. So it's about power control, and it's about manipulation, and it's still ultimately about hurting you. So if they are trying to stay friends with you, that's a hell no for me. Yeah, I am too. So we'll give it like maybe 5 or 10 more minutes, and then we'll be done. We're both hungry. My cat is a sweetie. My cat's my calm one. He's huge. He's like a mini panther.
It's fat.
He's not fat.
Fat.
He's not.
Fatty.
Stop! That's mean. You're being a bully.
He's my fatty.
That's weird.
Look how big this thing is.
He's not fat. He's just a big cat. He's not fat.
Big bone.
Okay, whatever. He's just a big cat. Oh my gosh, I don't know if she's still on, but hi, SJ. If y'all aren't following La Disco Mama, please make sure that you are. She's fantastic. She talks a lot about co-parenting as well.
She is not.
She's not. Oh, bummer. I missed her. But she talks a lot about co-parenting with an ex as well, too.
Pick one.
Oh my gosh, child. Thank you. You're so sweet. Thank you. Okay, so we have about 5 more minutes, guys. So does anybody have any other questions that either I have not answered yet or just new ones? And then I gotta make dinner. Any questions for Chad? Any questions for me? And don't forget the Dating Again webinars on January 25th. So even if you... I just think it's good even if you aren't necessarily ready to date again. I think it's just good education to have because it really just talks about healing and moving on to the point to where like we won't set ourselves or we aren't set up to do this again. That webinar is on January 25th. I think the registration is like only $25. It's really not even, it's not too bad. And anybody that's registered gets a free recording of the event sent to them. And if you aren't registered for the event, you're able to get a recording, but you have to buy it. So even if you can't make the actual event itself, you know, you'll get all the information and stuff. There's like a live Q&A. There's a panel of 6 people. So definitely check it out. This is the first webinar that I've seen when it comes to about dating after narcissism specifically. I wouldn't stay friends with an abuser. My ex tried that. I think he was afraid I'd tell people. And that's the other thing too, because it all goes back to like the manipulation thing, because he likes to set himself up as the victim. At least my ex did. So if he can show everybody, I don't think he was dumb enough to think that I was going to stay friends with him for long. Like, I don't think he was that dumb. I think he knew I was going to be done at some point in time. But if he tries so hard to be friends with me and then I cut it off, that makes him the victim. Which is also why I knew when I went no contact, it was very unlikely that he was going to reach out. And he didn't until I started dating him. Don't have proof, but it was maybe some. But yeah, and again, but that goes back to control. If they are trying to stay friends with you so you don't tell people, they're trying to control the narrative, your narrative specifically. So yeah, don't stay friends with an abuser. If they weren't your friend in the relationship, they're not going to be your friend after it. Alright guys, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up just before it gets much later. But I appreciate you guys coming on and hanging out with us. Y'all asked some great questions today. And again, all the resources that I have, book recommendations, webinars that are going on, everything is in the link in my bio, so please check that out. Also, make sure you're following me on YouTube. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. And again, everything is, all of that is in the link in my bio. So make sure that you guys, on YouTube especially, I go into a lot more, I post longer videos and stuff that go into a lot more in-depth content. And if you click the Instagram button on the profile, it actually gives you an option to go to my YouTube as well. So thank you guys again for joining us. We hope y'all have a great night, and we will see y'all the next time that we go live. So y'all have a great night and a great rest of your weekend. Bye y'all.